We are here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's Monday, December 11th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin filling in for Shin Yen. And you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Choi Ji-hee.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, we're going to start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. We start in Venice, Italy, where its iconic Grand Canal turned fluorescent green on Saturday. Climate activist group Extinction Rebellion has claimed responsibility for dumping a chemical dye into the canal. The group said that the protest was targeted against the COP28 summit taking place in Dubai, calling it a failure in the fight against climate crisis. Venice Mayor Luigi Brugano condemned the protest, tweeting that public services like transportation have been halted as a result. Now, back here in Korea, YouTube has decided to jump on the bandwagon of services, increasing their subscription fees. Last Friday, the company raised the monthly cost of its premium membership by 42.6%, from 10,450 Korean won to 14,900 won, which is around $11.30. Now, this marks the first fee hike since September 2020 for the most used app among Koreans. And finally, we've got exactly 3 weeks until 2024, and Korea rings in the new year at Seoul's Bosinggak Pavilion. Every year, a selected number of people get the honor of ringing the bell 33 times as the clock strikes 12. Now, this tradition dates back to 1953, and since 2005, Seoul City has been adding citizen representatives to the list through public recommendations. Public recommendations are back for the first time since 2019, and this year's recommendations just closed last Friday. So when we look at the past bell tollers, we see a mix of cultural and sports stars like football player Cho Kyu-sung last year and the character Peng-soo in 2019. And there are also those who've stood up for neighbors or triumphed over their personal challenges. So here in the studio, who do you think will ring the bell this year, or is there anyone special you'd love to see?
Well, for starters, I can't believe we're only 3 weeks away from 2024.
Time flies.
I mean, time flies. I mean, me and Chi have been on this program for almost a year now, so it's absolutely amazing to see us go this quick. I don't have a clue, to be honest with you, who will actually come. But what I would like to see is the Good Samaritans of South Korea. People who have been voted by their peers for doing something good for the community, whether that's voluntary work or whether it's to improve Korean society. I think those are the ones that should have the honor of, ringing the bell for the 33 times. So yes, let's vote for those, I guess it's closed now, but yes, let's hope it's Good Samaritans that are the ones that do it. Yeah.
Right. Now, what about you, Ji-hee?
I have no clue.
We're all
just like
clueless.
Walter, we're clueless.
It's so hard.
It is. But I do agree with Walter that the Good Samaritans should be the ones who will be ringing the bell. However, I try to think of the person who made it to the headlines quite often this year, and Lee Kang-in popped up in my head. And I'm sure, Korean football player, and I'm sure many of us in the country would like to see him, as long as he doesn't have a game playing during that time. I hope to see him ringing the bell for the new year.
All right, so Good Samaritans and also star athletes, Seoul City will announce who will be the bell tollers on the 3rd week of December. That was our news feed for this Monday. So we're now going to switch gears and move on to our main discussion topic of the day. Today, we're going to talk about education. Now, we've touched on this topic before on News Gen, like how passionate South Korea is about education. And while we often hear about the race to get into the top universities, this entire journey starts way before that. So for more, here's my AI voice secretary.
Ever heard of early childhood education? It's a learning kids get before they officially start school. While the term typically refers to places like nurseries, daycare centers, and kindergartens here in Korea, it often points to private education. A report by the Korea Institute of Public Finance Institute this year showed that families in Korea with kindergarten-age children increased their private education spending by almost 40% over the last 5 years.
So Korea is known for its massive private education market, and early childhood education is no exception. So take English kindergartens, for instance, which is a prime example of Korea's pre-primary education because they're even recognized as private education institutes by the government. So Walter, we know that you've worked in one of these kindergartens. So tell us what all these institutions are like.
Yes, I was fortunate or unfortunate to work in these English kindergartens. I mean, I love the kids, of course, but working in the kindergartens was a little bit different. Now, popular private education academies are getting more and more difficult to get into.
Right.
Now, many require entry tests for young students to take. And remember, these students aren't very old. They start at the ages of 4 and 5 years old, and they're being tested on their academic skills already. And if you're lucky to even get in, then comes the expensive cost of being able to get into the academy. Some up to 1 to 2 million Korean won, which is around 700 to 1,500 US dollars a month. And remember, in Korea, they don't just send them to one academy, they
Right.
send them to multiple
Right.
academies as well. However, sadly, this is driven by Korea's, I guess, competitive culture and society. And, to be in the best schools, to be in the best universities, etc. Not all, but many parents see this as a brag if their
Right.
child is going into a good academy or university, which I think is quite sick. So, yeah.
Right, and the English kindergartens, they've been around this country for decades. I know that really well because I'm also an English kindergarten graduate. Now, I heard that these days there are even new types of early childhood education. For example, I heard that there is a class prepping these children to medical school.
That's right. So it's become a trend for elementary school students to prepare for medical school entrance exams. Now, while in the past only high school students used to study for these exams, nowadays even young children are taking medical school classes and learning advanced math concepts such as calculus and geometry. Wow. And as per recent statistics, 1 out of every 4 elementary school students is studying to become a doctor, with money being one of the reasons for their choice of profession. Now, if you take a look on the screen, this chart displays the primary reasons why elementary school students nowadays aspire to become doctors, and most of them consider financial gain as a significant motivator to pursue a career in medicine. Now, due to the increasing competition and the widening gap between the rich and the poor, children's values are evolving, and the reasons that were prioritized earlier are not given much importance anymore. So if we asked children in the past, what do you want to become when you grow older?
Right.
They would say, oh, I want to become a scientist because, I like science. But nowadays, they would say, I want to become a doctor because you can earn a lot of money, which is quite sad, actually.
Yeah, it's quite sad. The society has definitely changed. So looking at English kindergartens and also these schools that cram schools that prepare children for med school, it's evident that the variety and intensity of early childhood education in Korea is on the rise. So what, in your opinion, are some of the reasons behind this trend?
Well, actually, to just tail end of what Jihi said, where the children are saying that it's because of money that they want to become doctors,
Right.
I reckon this is probably because the parents have told them that, you can earn a lot of money
Right.
being a doctor. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I was 6 or 7 years old, I didn't know the meaning of money or how useful it was.
Yeah, me too.
So therefore, I didn't understand what money, how it can help us in real life. So I think maybe the parents might be a bit of a problem in that area. But as I mentioned earlier, parents, again, use it as sort of a brag as well. There is this community amongst mostly mothers in Korea where they compare each other's children as,
Right.
hey, my child is in this academy, my child is in this academy. That could be a driving force. This carries on to the students themselves as well eventually, where they get to brag amongst their friends. Hey, I go to this academy or I go to that academy. So I would sum up that the importance to be a part of a selected number of students. They go to a special university, a special academy, etc. It's a kind of a narcissistic way, in my opinion, to be honest with you. This is coupled with, obviously, as we mentioned, the possibility of getting a higher job way into the future because it's
Right.
early education. Competition is needed to drive people to want to achieve their goals, but it becomes unbearing, and sometimes it stems from the parents and it puts more pressure on the children, and therefore the children get a lot of stress and they think that they're a failure.
Right. So this all links back to that excessive competition among students and parents here in Korea to go to the prestigious universities, and also which will lead to them to get what they call a successful and good job. Now, what are your thoughts, Chihi?
Well, I feel like the parents of these young children who are from Generation X and Millennials have themselves experienced this competitive nature of admissions and private education as children. So as a result, they invest in their children at a younger age, knowing that the competition is very fierce in our society. Now, private education spending among households with kindergarten-age children has increased by 38% over the past 5 years, this according to the Korea Institute of Public Finance. And it's been analyzed that parents' attitudes and social perceptions play a significant role in this trend. So parents who hold negative beliefs about income inequality in particular have lower expectations from government and are more likely to increase their spending on their children's private education. So such beliefs often result in greater distrust towards politicians as well as government officials and journalists, sadly. And as a result, these parents are more likely to choose private education for their children, feeling or believing that society is unjust, unreliable, and the only way to secure their future is to really take matters into their own hands.
Right. I understand why they're doing this, because they want the best for their children and they want to start faster because that's what they think will guarantee their children's success. Now, millennials and Gen Zs who grew up during this boom of early childhood education are starting to enter parenthood, as you know. So I want to ask you guys, are you guys willing to provide this education to your child?
Well, as a millennial, I remember learning various things during my childhood as well. So I attended different classes such as science, like I would be experimenting with different stuff, origami, art, piano, taekwondo, ballet, and math tutoring, etc. But then most of these classes were my choice rather than my parents, and I remember enjoying them very much, except the piano class.
Me too.
Oh yeah? Right. So I was an inquisitive child, I believe, and I wanted to learn different things. And I believe that exploring new things at an early age can really help in discovering one's interests, strengths, as well as potential, as long as they're not forced by the parents. Now, an education system that focuses solely on college entrance exams and on rote learning can be very ineffective, and it could cause unnecessary stress on young children as well. However, appropriate amounts of early learning can aid the child's growth and even their cognitive development, I believe.
Right, it can really bring up a child's potential. Now, Walter, we all know that you have a lovely baby daughter. Are you willing to provide this education for her?
No. No, within reason. Now, I don't plan to send my daughter to an English academy, not because I speak fluent English, but because I've worked in the English Academy area before, and I do see also the bad sides to it. If she really wants to, I'll possibly send her, but I'll be very wise as to where. Now, the reason why I say this is I'm also generalizing. At the end of the day, a hagwon or an academy is a business. And sometimes the directors don't have the child's education within their interests. They're more looking at the money side of things. So I'll give you an example. There was one child I was teaching who was struggling in his English classes. And we got to the point where everyone was sort of graduating to the next class. I suggested that he stayed back, but the director's interest was if he stays back, we could lose the money that he brings in. So that sort of damaged me as well as a human being, thinking that, you know, these are children and they are under immense stress at the ages of 5, 6, and 7, which is something that I don't think children should have.
Right, so some pros and cons of the various types of early childhood education. And to expand our discussion, we also asked our viewers whether they feel early childhood education is a must and how intense of a program should it be. Now, here's what 3 of them had to say. Now, if you look at the screen, Kite says early childhood education is a necessity, but learning does not solely take place in the classroom. Kids out to get a more moral education and learn what it means to be a human. Salmon says, from my point of view, early childhood education is necessary, but if I talk about intensity level of this kind of program, it should start from a very basic level and try to make study more fun. And Hannah says, without a doubt, stress-free and playful education plays a pivotal role in the development of young children. Early childhood learning should be geared toward cultivating curiosity rather than solely pursuing academic excellence. So based on these comments, we can see that a lot of people are for early childhood education, but they have to be stress just free, they have to be of good quality. So to expand our discussion, back here in the studio, you guys both have experiences living abroad. So could you tell me what the early childhood education system was like in those countries?
Well, when I was young, I attended an international school in Bangkok, Thailand, and I found it interesting that Asian students mostly received pre-primary education, such as learning an instrument or receiving private math tutors, while Western kids, they mainly engaged in after-school activities of their choice. And as for me, I remember joining after-school club activities as well, such as soccer and choir, and not so much of pre-primary academic education as they do here in Korea. However, as I progressed to secondary school, I remember receiving academic private education such as math and English, but not so much before school.
So it's a bit different than here in Korea. And Walter, how about Australia?
It's very similar to what he said. For me, it was more about the artistic side first before the academic side. But yes, it's very different in Western countries than it is to Asian countries.
Right, so now expanding our discussion even further, we're going to include an education expert in our discussion. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. So joining us today is Scott Shepard, an assistant professor at Chongshin University in Korea. Welcome, Professor Shepard, back to the show.
Good morning, nice to see you.
So, Professor, first of all, we're noticing that early childhood education is kicking it at an even younger age here in Korea nowadays. So what do you think is the reason behind this?
Well, there are a lot of factors obviously involved, and we probably can't cover everything. But I'd like to suggest maybe 4 or 5 possibilities, some more noble and some a bit less so. The first one is something we've already been touching on quite a lot, which is the idea of overweening parents. You know, the stereotypical tiger mum. I think it's a stereotype, but I also think there is some truth in it. You know, I've seen it myself. I'm sure you have as well. These are the kind of people who will be expecting their children, you know, you're going to be a doctor, whether you like it or not. And I think the pie chart you had, really, there was the 20% other section, and I think that other section probably is my mum told me I have to be a doctor is probably where that was. So that's one suggestion. I think it comes from a motivation of love, but it does have some problems which attend to it. Secondly, capitalism. We've also touched on this already. You know, the companies, they provide an education, and they try to provide, I think, quite good quality education if they can, and they market that to parents, and the parents buy that. This is, you know, an exercise of free choice, of free will. A third suggestion is, I think, something very noble, which is the high value that Koreans place on education. This is something which we should probably praise a bit more. That, you know, if we think of Korea 70 years ago, it was a mess. It was just recovering from a war, and where we are now is just incredible. And that's really down to the hard work ethic and high value on education in Korea. And you know, education is great as long as it doesn't become your idol, your god. And that's what I tell my students at the end of every term. This is the end of term. I have some exams later on today, and I tell my students, you know, whether you do really well and you get great marks and you're so proud, or you know, you completely flunk your exams, either way, you shouldn't let it define who you are. And I think this is vital when we're thinking about education. We have to remember this. Fourth idea is the idea of, you know, really intense competition. You've already touched on this as well. This is kind of the negative side of the high value of education. And then lastly, I think the low birth rate clearly has an impact. If you have 5 or 6 kids running around, you're just trying to stop them from fighting and climbing on the wall. You can't afford to send them anywhere. But when you only have 1 child or maybe 2 children, you can send them to these expensive places because, you know, you love them and you want them to do well.
All right, I think you made some great points, but from your perspective, do you think early childhood education is necessary though?
Yeah, I mean, I think we start with the fundamental idea that good education is good. And obviously the qualifier there is that education should be good. Walter said he taught in these kinds of schools, and I'm sure he did a very good job teaching. And if you're thinking of education only in terms of just, you know, solving worksheets or, you know, doing some kind of equations or something like that, then I think we're going to have a problem. You know, making little children sit down and try to perform academic activities is just a waste of time. It's not going to help. It's going to have negative impacts. But if you teach children to play, to be creative, to be innovative, to solve problems, to socialize with their peers, that's education, and that has clear benefits. It's a great thing to do. And, you know, kids need to be somewhere. If they're not in some kind of class somewhere, they're going to be at home. And if they're at home, you know, they might be lucky enough to have a parent or a carer who can stay at home and dedicate their time playing with the child and stimulating them, giving them great activities to help them develop. But, you know, every parent knows parenting is hard. I am also a proud father of a little daughter, and it's exhausting. It's just tiring. And, you know, the easiest thing to do would be just to stick them in front of some screen somewhere, and you can finally, I can breathe, I can have a shower for the first time in a week. Now, it's one thing if you're letting your kids watch, you know, Arirang TV for all the latest news and current events. That's great. But in general, if you're just, you know, letting your kid just watch anything on TV, or, you know, even worse, like YouTube or TikTok, something like that, then actually it's probably better that they are going to some kind of educational thing where at least they're not just letting their brain fizzle out as they watch a screen all day. So, you know, it has its pros and cons, and I'm not 100% against or in favor of early childhood education in the form that you've been talking about today. I think good education is always a good thing, but as long as it's good.
All right, Professor Shepard, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So as Professor Shepard mentioned, early childhood education of a good quality can help children achieve their full potential. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So can one of you guys give a suggestion about how we can improve early childhood education in Korea? Who wants to go?
I'll give it to Chi.
Oh.
Thank you. Well, I think it's a good point to make, actually. Education at young age, I think it's often motivated by parents' anxieties because of the fierce competition we have towards entrance examinations. So what we need is an education system that values individuality, and we need to make sure that we can help them to teach themselves and be self-directed as well. And it's important to make sure that children can discover their passions and really help them to think for themselves as well. Yeah.
All right. Anything you want to add, Walter?
Yeah, well, I guess I agree with absolutely Jihi. I hope that one day I can, you know, help my daughter do what she wants to do rather than force her what, you know, that she doesn't want to do, like some parents do in this world. But yes, I completely agree with what Jihi said.
Right, so respecting what a child would want would lead to quality early childhood education. All right, that's all the time we have for today, but NewsGen is here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics. Young people are talking about. Special thanks to Choi Ji-hee.
Thank you.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And this was Song Yu-jin filling in for Sun Yeon. I had the most amazing 6 days as part of the NewsGen fam. Yeon will be back in the studio from tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. We are News Generation.